Okay, so good morning everyone. My name is Padraig. I'm joined here with Laurence Shalloo. And what we're doing at this first board is we're going to firstly look back at what expansion has delivered for Ireland over the last 10 years. And then I suppose ask the question, should we continue to expand? Okay, so if we look back, and I suppose we always use a reference period of the period 2008-2010 because that was what used as food harvest. Back then, the average dairy farm in Ireland was doing about 20,000 kilos of milk solids. You probably can't see this down the back, but we were doing about 20,000 kilos of milk solids back in 2010. Since then, we've increased by about 70%, and today the average farm is doing about 35,000 kilos of milk solids. The green line here then represents the average family farm income. How much money were they making out of this? And you can see back then they were making somewhere around 40,000 euros from 20,000 kilos of milk solids. And that's increased also by about 70% to, on average, about 70,000 euros over the last 3 years. So we can see that the expansion in dairying has contributed very significantly to family farm income. And in that period of time, the average milk price actually went down by about 0.4 cent a litre when you compare this period to this period. Okay, so if we hadn't had expansion and if we had factored in all the inflation and costs, we would have seen a family farm income. Okay, so from a financial point of view, that has been very good. The other thing about expansion, I suppose, and one of the key risks myself and Laurence were talking about for years up here at the Open Day was the risk of, I suppose, increasing costs and particularly increasing debt. And what we've actually seen is the opposite has happened. The average debt level per kilo of milk solids has gone from €3.25 down to €2.05. Okay? Now, when you look at that in perspective of anywhere else in the world, and you look at our key competitors like the Dutch or the Danes or New Zealanders, that figure would be about €15 of debt per kilo of milk solids. So I suppose it's one of our key, resilient strengths is that we have a low level of debt per kilogram of milk solids. So overall, you would say from a financial perspective, the increase or the expansion has been really, really successful. We've grown milk production, increased farm profit, not increased costs or not increased debt levels. Okay? But we also have to look, there are some challenges, there have been some growing pains, and there are some things that we're going to have to deal with. Okay? And there are some significant risks ahead as we look forward for the next 5 to 10 years. What are the key things that can go wrong? The first thing, and we identify this as our most significant risk, and the reason is because we've seen it happen in so many other countries where they expand by intensifying the system, okay, and they drift into higher input systems, okay, when they focus on increasing milk output rather than increasing profitability, okay. I suppose we see it as a very significant risk. We need to continue to focus on resilient systems, and their grass-based systems are resilient, they're profitable, and there's a real risk that we'll drift into buying inputs to drive output, okay? So that's our first big risk. The second risk is around our social license to produce milk, okay? What we mean by that social license is what the community as a whole thinks of our milk, thinks of dairy production. Do they think it's good for community or good for society? And the key factors that affect that are our environmental impacts, okay, and that's very much going to be dealt with at the next board and the next stop down there. And the other issue is animal welfare, okay, it has an impact on what they see of how they perceive dairying, and we're going to touch on that a little bit later on. One of the third, I suppose, biggest challenges that we see over the next number of years is that around people. The ability of our farms to attract young people and to retain skilled people within the industry, okay? That is going to be a challenge, and it's going to require us all to upskill ourselves in how we manage and operate dairy farms, okay? So that's where we are today. We have had a very successful expansion, but we have some, I suppose, growing pains or some challenges. So where do we go from here? I suppose the first thing we would say is that you look within your farm gate. And we're looking here on this board, on this table, at where the average farm is today, okay? Mean calving day the 6th of March, 6-week calving about 64%, stocked at about 2.1 cows per hectare, utilising about 8 tonnes of grass. And when you take out the single farm payment and take out the cost of the farmer's own labour, the net profit per hectare is about €473 per hectare, okay? So where can we go with that system first within the farm gate? Okay, there's two key things that are going to drive change, and the first one is growing more grass, okay, and utilising more grass. Going to be dealt with in detail up at the fourth board and the demo village. Like, there's potential on average to shift up to about 13 tonnes of grass. So we want to move people from this system towards this, okay? Now, the reality is there's very few people achieving these targets, but it gives us a direction where we need to be moving on, what do we need to focus on. And the focus is on growing, utilising more grass. And the second thing is improving that compact calving, more fertile cows, calving more compactly, getting longer grass growing season, getting higher milk solids. Shifting milk solids from about 410 up to about 475 kilos of milk solids per cow. Okay, by having compact spring calving and longer lactations. And if we can grow more grass, we can increase the stocking rate. We can't increase the stocking rate without growing the extra grass, or else we'll only increase our costs. Okay, and if we increase our stocking rate, we can then increase farm profit. And you can see the potentials that's there. There's another €2,000 a hectare to be taken off within your own farm gate before you go looking at expanding anywhere else. Okay, so there's massive, significant potential within the farm gate, and that gives us, I suppose, a sense of direction of where we should be travelling. Okay. So I suppose some of the key considerations, if you are considering further expansion, I suppose focus on the basics within the farm gate of grass utilisation and the appropriate cow. We need to know when to stop growing. Okay. When is your farm maxed to its capacity to grow grass? You have a stocking rate to match that. You need to know then it's time to stop growing, okay? Any extra growth won't give you any extra profitability, okay? It's only increasing risk and reducing your resilience of the system, okay? If you want further growth, or if you feel that is a profitable industry, and if you're achieving these targets, then you should look at replicating it, okay? Replicate it on more land, whether it's land outside the milking platform, and bring in extra land onto the platform, or set up a second milking platform. But focus on this efficiency first, then look at replicating it rather than over-intensifying it, and don't over-capitalise on it. We need to keep down this level of indebtedness, okay? So further growth by bringing in more land. We know that dairying is far more profitable than any other enterprise that's there at the moment, okay? So dairying, when it's run at this level, can adequately remunerate all the resources of land, labour and capital. So it can, when it's well run, it can be very profitable to shift more land from other enterprises into dairying, okay? 2019 is likely at this point to be quite a good year, okay? It's been a relatively good grass growing year and a reasonable enough milk price, okay? So financially, it's likely that this is going to be somewhere up here around, okay, for 2019. So I suppose we believe we should use 2019 as an opportunity to de-risk your system. You know, use that cash if it's available to, I suppose, take away some of the risks there for the next number of years, because we will see downturns again, okay? We will see bad grass growing years again. We will see bad milk price years again, okay? And the best ways of doing that, I suppose the first one is improve soil fertility, okay? It's like money in the bank. In fact, it's better than money in the bank because it gives you a better interest, okay? You have, I suppose, if you improve soil fertility, it's one of the key limitations to growing more grass. If you can grow more grass, your system is more resilient. It can cope with bad weather better, and it can cope with a low milk price better, okay? Because you can grow the grass in the years that you want it, okay? The second thing is, it has been a good grass growing year to date. I think we've grown about an extra ton of feed compared to the same time last year, okay, per hectare. So there is now an opportunity, if we get rain soon, to build a feed reserve over the next number of months of maybe 300-400 kilos of dry matter per cow, and it's there if we get a bad weather year like we got last year again. Want to come back on this issue of animal welfare, in particular on calf rearing. Okay, a lot of you might have seen at prime time on the greyhounds recently. Okay, we don't want something like that to happen around dairy calves. Okay, it's a key risk to our business. Okay, we believed, I suppose 2019 is an opportunity to put resources on farms that you don't have to sell the calves when they're 2 weeks of age, okay? We have built systems of production where we've increased cow numbers, we've put in place the resources for milking those cows, we've put in place the resources for housing those cows over the winter. We also need the resources, whether they're on your farm or on somebody else's farm, but you should have the resources in place to rear those calves for a period to carry over that peak calf season. When we put a lot of calves are born over a very short period of time, they go on the market is just saturated for such a short period of time. We need to have the facilities on our own farm. We have to take responsibility ourselves for those calves and not looking that someone else takes responsibility for them, okay? And we have to have those resources on our farms, and 2019 is an opportunity to do that. Okay, we believe like you are always going to get a return on investing in your own skills, and the reason you're here today is because of that, I suppose. And 2019, you should continue to focus on two things. We would say your ability to grow grass, and if you are employing labour, your ability to manage and retain staff on your farm, okay? They should be key skill sets that you should focus on between now and the end of the year. And lastly, and certainly not least, is that you know, there's nothing better to be able to cope with a downturn than having a cash reserve in place, okay? It instills discipline in the system by putting that cash reserve away in the high milk price years, okay? So we believe that further expansion, there is still a lot of potential there for further expansion, mostly because it's profitable. We can see here how profitable it has been. We can see here how profitable, how much more profitable it can be, okay? A lot has been talked about our carbon emissions over the last number of months in particular, and we had the climate change document came out recently, and I suppose fortunately it highlighted, I suppose, the efficiency of our system. But one thing to bear in mind when you're looking at carbon is a global problem, okay? In the last 10 years we have increased milk production by 3 billion litres per year. If that 3 billion litres had been produced in some other country which had an average carbon footprint, it would have produced 4 million tonnes of extra carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So effectively, by our expansion, we have displaced 4 million tonnes per year of carbon dioxide. Okay? That is because of our grass-based system. Because our system has a lower carbon footprint, we don't have the carbon associated with growing feeds of deforestation of land to grow feeds to feed dairy cows, which happens in a lot of other countries, okay? So provided we stick to our grass-based system, we can maintain that carbon efficiency and we can further improve on it, and a lot of today's talk will be focused on further improving on our carbon efficiency, but it needs to be built around a grass-based system. We know there's still a lot of land. 20% of the land of Ireland is under dairying. We know it's far more profitable than anything else you can do with land in Ireland. So therefore, you know, there's still a lot of opportunity there, whether you're here as a beef farmer today, or you're here as, I suppose, someone who has an outside beef block. There's a lot of potential to move land into dairying, okay? We know that the market out there for grass-fed products is growing. You know, it's now, I suppose, considered one of the niche brands in the world, because only about 15% of the milk of the world is coming from grass. So the market potential is there for a grass-fed product, and we need to continue to focus on our grass-based systems. One of the key issues that we don't talk a lot about in Europe, but on a global context is quite important, is food security. And they look at food security in terms of the potential of land to produce edible protein. And if we put our cows on a TMR-based system, we would have to give those cows 2 kilograms of human edible protein to get 1 kilogram of edible protein out. Okay? Whereas in our grass-based systems, if we give our cows 1 kilogram of edible protein, we get back out 2.5 kilos of edible protein. So from a food security point of view, our system, you know, our grass-based system is very secure, okay? And is contributing to global food security. And I suppose the last reason why further expansion is a good thing for Ireland is the impact it has on rural viability. And dairy farming is a very profitable business. It's spread around through every parish and village in the country, and it contributes to the sustainability, the economic sustainability of all those regions, okay? So we have a couple of key take-home messages, a few things if you can remember them when you get out here. I suppose the first one is that if we're going to focus on growing sustainably, the first and the most important one, we avoid that drift into higher input systems, okay? There'll be lots of people out there selling you stuff that will tell you it'll make cows have more milk. That doesn't really matter. What matters is, do you make more profit? It's not this line that matters, it's this one, okay? It's profit, okay? And focusing on the grass-based system. There is significant potential for further efficiency gains, okay? We can see it there within our farms. You know, this is where, we see the limit at this point in time, but like we need to be moving in that direction, okay? And there is also a significant scope for enterprise shift to move, I suppose, land from other enterprises into dairying, because dairying has the capacity to repay on the resources employed if it's operated at high levels of efficiency. Okay, that's all I've got for you. Do you have any questions, comments, views? Anyone want to disagree with me? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the question is, I suppose, what return do we get from rearing calves? And we don't get a cash return. I suppose we see it as a risk management strategy. We see that it's a risk to the industry as a whole. It's a risk to individual dairy farmers. I suppose if we have, a lot of calves born over a short period of time and we have to sell them onto the market, we see that as a real risk around animal welfare. And I suppose if we have the resources on place, reality is not going to make any money, but I suppose it's de-risking our system. It's taking away one of the stresses that you have in the spring, okay? If you don't have the resources in place to rear those calves, it is a major stress if nobody's there to buy them, okay? We're very dependent on shipping calves out of the country, which is dependent on the weather. And, we believe it's too much of a risk to be managing or to be coping with, so we need to just de-risk it. But it's not going to make any money. So the question is, like, if you're rearing for a number of weeks, will there be somebody there to buy them? I suppose, yeah, so it is something we've been looking at, and we've done it on some of the farms this year. And there is, we believe that the problem around calf sales is really a timing. It's just too many calves. We have 500,000 calves a week coming out there in the month of, the last week of February, first 2 weeks of March, and yourself, if you're following the calf market, it just collapses. The beef farmers haven't got the skill sets at the moment to rear young calves, the 2-week-old calves. They're not willing to buy them. There's a capacity there around shipping calves. So, by having the calves around for a number of weeks longer, it overcomes that real seasonal peak, but it also makes the calves, more attractive or more manageable to beef farmers. Okay, any other questions? Comments? No. Okay, so the question is, the stocking rate going from 2.1 to 2.8, will, I suppose there be environmental regulations that will restrict that in the future? And I suppose, firstly, I'd say about this, we wouldn't envisage that you would increase the stocking rate until you could grow the grass. Okay? It's not about that we should go home and stock our farms up at that. If you can grow this amount of grass, then there's an opportunity there, carry the stocking rate to make extra profitability. That's the first thing. I suppose the second thing is, the regulations at the moment restrict us at 2.94 or 2.95 cows per hectare. Okay? We don't know where, the regulations, but I suppose the key focus on this, and this is going to be dealt with in real detail at the next board, is going to focus on nitrogen efficiency. Okay? We need to get more nitrogen efficient our systems, and that's by harvesting more of the nitrogen that we apply in the form of grass and milk solids.